Okay, Steve-O, it looks like we're live on our new time slot. How are you, man?
Not too bad. Not too bad. You like the new time slot better?
Well, just my schedule's become a bit nuts, so it's just a different day, right?
It
So
just kind
yeah,
of snuck up on me. I guess I was used to, getting off the weekend, having a couple of days to think about the show and only really had like a day. And usually I
yeah.
don't think about it the first day. So then I didn't think about it today. So I didn't really think about it at all. So I lost a day. I might have spent tomorrow thinking about that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna think about the content for today's show tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
I'll do that tomorrow. Yes.
Fair enough. Well, I've just had a epic morning of I run my cohort 5 today on personal brand.
Oh, nice. Nice.
And I tell you, I haven't had 1 hour just flash by so quickly. There's just so much to cover, right, on personal brand within the Microsoft business application space. But
Well, in any space, really. I mean, but that's
yeah,
just the space we happen to be in. But a lot of the stuff that you and I have been doing to try and build ours, would be really applicable anywhere.
yeah. So that's my question to you. That's like, running into this morning, I was thinking, what do you proactively do around, and what I like, one of the things that I talk about is good morning, DIY D365. What's your real name, DIY365? But what I talk about is that, I created NZ365 guy as my alias, right? And it was because my name is so bloody boring. Mark John Smith is my full name. Prashant.
Three of the most generic names in the world put together.
Generic, right? And so I decided, I can't stand out from the crowd with Mark Smith. And so I built NZ365 guy, but then I see people kind of like wanting to replicate that and want to come up with their fancy name. And I'm like, mate, like you've used stevemordue.com, right? That's what you've got.
Yep.
I would have much preferred to stick with my name because then I don't have to explain anything to people that are not in the industry, right?
Yeah, I think if you got a pretty common name, though, I could see a lot of people thinking that, I need a handle. Yeah, I need a nickname or something like that. And it made sense for you. I mean, they'll never find you in a search for Mark Smith,
Never, ever. But tell me, what's been your journey of personal brand with Steve Mordue? Kind of where did your thinking start to go this way? Did you do it before you came into the Microsoft system, or was it when you were in the Salesforce side of things? How did the journey evolve for you?
I didn't do as much in the Salesforce side of things, but I think I was looking the other day, my blog, the stevemordue.com blog, was started in 2007.
Okay.
So
wow.
I must have been writing something way back then, but
wow, that's a long time ago.
You change, you change career paths, you change directions. Sometimes you got to go back and just delete really, really old crap. That's, I mean, even if it's juice to the site, it's useless because it's not relevant at all to what you're doing. So
you do a cleanup.
And when I got started doing some writing around this, it was, it was the same style that I do now. I was making fun of Steve Ballmer and some of his stupid decisions, and that was all in the days of, what is cloud and moving to cloud and stuff like that, so there's plenty of stuff out there. And I think the key is, at least for me, was, finding a voice that's my own.
Yeah.
I look back at, I kind of always did. I wrote a couple of technical posts way back when, which got a lot of traction because people were looking for an answer to the question, but didn't generate what I was interested in, which was either business or branding for myself. Technical posts don't build a brand, I don't think. They're just a resource. Somebody goes and reads it. They don't even care who wrote it.
Yep.
They follow the directions, get their problem solved, delete it. It's accomplished nothing for the writer at all.
That is interesting that you say that. That's very interesting. Hey, Patty, I see Patty's joined us from Scotland.
Oh, yes.
Why I find that interesting is that when I founded Magnetism, I had blogging was a thing to get our brand out there.
Yep.
And it worked very effectively. But we were known in the technical community for our technical prowess. We weren't known in the business community for people that would buy our services and stuff.
Yeah.
So what I found, I created a platform for my staff to get recognition around their skills. So therefore made it an easy target for other partners to go, wow, that dude knows his stuff. Let's see if we can shoulder tap him and recruit him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, I went to Australia and I had a massive team in Australia, and I had everybody, part of their employment contract, I think I had it written into, definitely in their job description, that they had to write one blog post a week. And that was till because my goal was to do, one a week. No, was it one a week? One a month. One a month. It was one a month, must have been.
Yep.
And my goal was to get to a point that I was releasing one blog post a day for 30 days of the month, right? So the thing is that the minute my team went through 30 people, I then had a backlog. And there was some points that I was doing, Prashant's right, it was one a month. And then there was a point that I was doing 2 blog posts release a day because of the volume. And then I was like, nah, this is crazy. So everyone could drop down to 1 every 2 months, right? Because my team grew through 60 odd. So it was easy for me to kind of have that. But at the end of the day, a lot of technical content, a lot of helping other people in the community, absolutely. But from a business perspective, I've got to say, we didn't get any, customer ABC going, wow, I read that blog post on, how you concatenate 50 fields using practical extraction reporting language, and that's why I want to hire you to do our project, right?
Well, I think that's the challenge with technical posts. Technical posts are not read by buyers. They're read by technical people, and the technical person doesn't have the issue that he's searching for help on until after they've bought the damn product.
Correct.
So it's too late. They've already made a decision. They've already bought the product. They've decided to have their guy do it in-house, and he's going to figure it out one way or another, or his partner is, and they're doing the search and finding your content to tell them how to do their job.
Yeah.
So it's kind of thankless, but it'll get a lot of traction. I know that was also a model that PowerObjects used. Remember old Joe CRM?
Correct. Yeah.
Jim, he had the same mode there. I mean, every employee had to write a post or something like that, and they were generating 1 or 2 a day of posts on that blog, and it's great for the juice, to get you up there, which is something I've never spent enough time on. The whole SEO side of things and keywords and
neither. Content creation is the best SEO. I feel like it definitely drove traffic. We got up to the point hitting 10,000 unique visitors a month, which meant the hit count was through the roof. But
I'll get those sometimes on a single post.
Yeah.
Depending on the topic and how the timing and stuff like that. I think I was telling you before the call, when I look at the 2 places that we, ForceWorks as a company, have gotten the most business, the number one is Microsoft, referring customers to us, from people at Microsoft that are familiar with me. But definitely number 2 has been that blog of people that are reading about, whatever it is I'm talking about. And
so this is your personal Steve Mordue blog, not a ForceWorks blog, right?
Yep. ForceWorks doesn't have a blog. ForceWorks has a link to the CEO blog.
Yep.
So from ForceWorks, you can jump over to the CEO's blog. Exactly. Now, I think it's important to separate that. And I know it's been a discussion among some of the MVPs about blogging under their company's blog or blogging under their personal. I mean, it definitely makes a difference if you're an employee of a company and you're blogging on their blog. Well, that's you're doing that for them.
Yeah.
Unless there's some rule they have that you can't go out and blog personally, which I never heard of that rule.
And it's definitely a rule that I'd be wanting to challenge if I ever came across something like that.
Yeah. And in my case, I mean, I own my own company and I still don't want to blog on the company blog. I still want to do it out separate personally, because my personal brand will survive whatever business I would want to get into. I've carried the personal brand from ForceWorks over to Rapid Start, over to Power ISV, over to this show, over to whatever the heck I want to do. It's not It's not ForceWorks or any of the companies.
Yeah.
And you've taken a very similar path. I mean, more aggressively than me, that's for sure, especially around the video content and podcasting.
Yeah, it's interesting. Because I've definitely cut back to what I was doing last year in the UK, and that's probably partly was like once we knew the move was happening, there was a lot of other things that are not necessarily normal to move and stuff, and even getting set up back here. Enterprise AR just joined us online there. Welcome. So yeah, that's definitely affected things, and I don't know, as in, I'm a very planned person, and so I like things to be scheduled and things, I find that creativity often comes in a planned environment, which kind of on in a way, right? But
we're definitely the opposite on that.
Some of the most famous writers in the world say, I'm creative at 9 a.m. every morning when I sit at my desk and I write for 5 hours. I choose to be creative. Like that's, my point of, because I'm planned, because that's what my career is. That's what I'm doing. And so, and yeah, I've definitely gone for that. But yeah, I just come back to that quandary about writing under the company. I don't know that I would get my team again to write a technical blog. If I built a team again, what I would probably do is get them all to create their own personal blogs and help them individually become superstars on their own blogs.
Yeah.
Rather than putting it under a
over the concern about them being poached.
Yeah, I know that, but I've kind of got to that point now in my career that you can't really get shortchanged in life. I feel that everything, and you might not agree with me on this, but everything swings and roundabouts. And if you help enough people get ahead in life, you'll get ahead. You'll do okay, your business, whatever.
Yeah, I'd rather just step on their backs and climb up. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Oh, goodness. I do think that, I think one of the things about scheduling time, for example, I'm going to write a blog post every Monday morning or something like that is, my schedule is completely random. I mean, I may not write something for a month and write four things in a week, but that's because that's when things strike me that are significant enough to talk about.
Yeah.
If I had to sit down every week and force myself to write something, I'd probably write a bunch of stuff that wasn't that interesting just to fill that slot in that time. Because, our space is a lot of stuff moving quickly in it, but it all doesn't move on every Monday morning. There's stuff, it's kind of comes out in fits and jerks, which is kind of how I write. I don't know if you could hear that horn out there. The cruise ships are leaving. I'm downtown now. And
I didn't even know you were close to the ocean there.
So I'm Tampa Bay. So I'm right on the bay, and we got a cruise terminal here. And about this time of day, they're all leaving for the, so they're heading out. So they're all pulling their big foghorn deals as they head out under the Skyway and then out into the Gulf of Mexico and off onto Mexico or Caribbean or wherever they're going.
Yeah. Those that are on the call, come on, where's your questions? Haven't got any questions coming through there. Did some come through on WhatsApp this week? I saw a flurry of engagement that you had with various people. What was that all about?
Frankly, a little annoying, but the whole API limits conversation that was beat to death several months ago by every MVP out there that this is horrible. This is the end of the world. And Charles getting on my show and Charles out there publicly saying, look, this is a non-issue for all but the really, really edge cases. This is the guy running the platform telling you that unless you're one of those weird edge cases, and I can tell you from our telemetry internally, there aren't very many, you don't have to worry about this. Did not keep everybody from sitting there doing some math saying, wait a minute, if I open a form, it generates 12. I don't give a fuck how much your math adds up to. The guy's saying he's looking at the telemetry and it's only going to affect a fraction of people. So stop manufacturing fucking issues. It's a manufactured issue.
I thought what was interesting was Patty's comment in that WhatsApp chat, which is they had the scenario where
Yep.
somebody under their account. It did take off.
Yep.
And then, but they had no way of knowing that until Microsoft support told them.
And then when he realized that the problem was it's the way they put something together.
Yeah.
You know, that was the challenge there. And on the $10 license, you know, the $10 license, I mean, obviously you got to look at everything around that. I'm just looking at Frank's comment about
the
$10 license. The $10 license is it's $10 freaking dollars for one thing. So yeah, you're not going to
but
get.
It's not a license, is it? This is what I wanted to bring up. It's not really a license.
It's a capacity. It's in the capacity licensing section. So you buy passes like you would buy capacity of flows or things like that. But it's a 10.
So hang on a second. So listen. What's the minimum license I need to deploy one Power App to one user? What's the minimum license? Yeah.
Well, since these are called passes, they're not a license. So you'd be looking at $40.
I can't use a $10, right?
Well, you can use a $10 for that user to use that single app, yes, but it's not a license, it's a pass. It's a consumption.
See, this is where I'm confused. And why did they come in with all of a sudden this concept of passes to something that's been quite clear? You have an end user license.
I think that
what is a pass meant to do?
This has more to do with the way they think Power Apps are going to be used and the way they think they're going to be used in enterprise, because at the end of the day, you know, Microsoft is building everything they're building for enterprise customers.
Yep.
Whether enterprise customers are the biggest buyers or not, doesn't matter. That clearly is the target segment. Everybody else, hey, if it works for you, great, but you're not our target. Our target is enterprise, and enterprise is potentially going to deploy, you know, a huge number of Power Apps across a bunch of people. And those people are going to continuously be changing and coming in and out of role, and just dealing with a user level license for that kind of a model is too much effort. People switching departments. I mean, once you set them up with, say, Office 365, as long as they're an employee, they'll have their Office 365 account. But you can get access to a particular app, and you know, a month later, maybe they need another one, or they switch departments. So it's too much moving around, I think, in their mind, or will be too much moving around of these small apps throughout an organization.
Okay, let me repeat back to you what I think I understand it is. So let's say I had an Office 365 E3 license as an employee, right? Mm-hmm. That means I get a bunch of software tools, applications as part of that. If I bought a pool of 100 $10 licenses, passes,
yes,
and I deployed an app that allowed people to check in when they entered my building, so the receptionist logged and credentialed into that app on the counter. Is that pass allowing that receptionist to use it at that point? And if I had 5 offices and only 3 passes, only 3 of the receptionists could use it in their office, the other 2 wouldn't get it.
Think of it as a more dynamic way, where let's say you built this app and you bought 100 passes and capacity behind it. And then you go to this app and you shared it with 100 people, right? You shared the app with 100 people.
So you don't assign a license to it.
You do not assign a license. You're going to share this app with 100 people because you have 100 passes. You can share it with 100 people. And then as people leave, you remove them from it, share it with someone else, remove them, share it with someone else. So you're continuously it's more dynamic than having to go into each user, go assign this thing, give it a security role. You know, you're just sharing and unsharing apps up to the number of passes that you have. So much more dynamic, easier, faster. And you can do all this with groups too. I mean, once you set up the groups, you don't have to go into the apps. I mean, you just go in the group and add and remove people to the group, and they'll all be able to use that pass. And you know, Frank's point is not misunderstood. I think what the $10 license or pass is very applicable for a lot of use cases, but it is not a replacement for a $95 user license. The $95 user license is clearly going to come with not only a lot more features, capabilities, no restricted entities, et cetera. It's also going to come with higher API limits, which is certainly, I know the one that Charles had been talking about was those. It wasn't talking about there's no issue with the limits on a $10 pass, because they're not thinking of the $10 passes. And this would be an interesting thing to find out, because they're not thinking of these $10 passes as a way for people to build an enterprise sales solution to use instead of Microsoft's enterprise sales. They're not thinking that you're going to do that, at least not at scale, because you probably would then start bumping into those API limits. But the API limits are also a capacity add-on, right? You can buy higher limits. And I'd be interested to do the math on, okay, I'm going to deploy this with $10 passes, and I know I'm going to hit the limit. So I'm going to go buy more API capacity for, I don't know, wherever I need to apply it. And then what does that math look like versus just paying, the full price for a full price license? Again, this is assuming that you're not getting, for whatever it is you're trying to do, that you don't need the value of the first party app. So what they're bringing with their logic and all that sort of stuff, that, that you build a completely custom application, But I think before I would opt to tell a customer, we're going to build a completely custom application for you on Dynamics.
Yeah.
Using any of the out-of-the-box entities or logic. It's custom from the ground up. And we need to put you on a $95 license per user. I think before I did that, I definitely would do the math on a $10 pass and capacity add-ons.
I like Lindsay's comment there. If I had a podcast, it would just be me saying passes, licenses, fuck, over and over and over.
Well, that is our podcast, isn't it? That's what we do in our live show.
So hang on a second. Let's just back up, because then I now understand that $10 pass. The $40, is that a pass or a license?
The $40 is a license.
Okay, so therefore it is assigned to a user, and I could deploy a Power App under that.
Well, you can deploy unlimited Power Apps under that, which is really kind of that trigger point, right? I mean, you could create, let's say you created 5 custom Power Apps in your organization that you want to distribute with $10 passes to everybody out there, right?
Yep.
So we give Frank out there access to 2 of those apps. We need 2 passes. So it's going to be $20, $10 each for Frank to access those 2 apps. We give Lindsay, we want to give her access to all 5 of these apps. Well, we're not going to go get 5 passes for $50. We're instead going to give her a P2 license or the full Power App license for $40. And now she's unlimited. So the tipping point there is really 4 apps. If you're going to build and share 4 apps or more with an individual user, well, you might as well just get the $40 unlimited, because mathematically it makes more sense.
Okay, so you couldn't deploy a $10 pass without a $40 app somewhere in the organization. Is that right? Because where does the server, the 1 gig of storage, all that kind of shit come from?
Well, for one thing, you can't do any makers, right? App passes are not makers. The holder of an app pass can't make anything. So somebody's got to make this stuff, right? Yeah. Somebody's got to provision the instances, somebody's got to do that sort of stuff. And you can't do that as a pass holder, if you will.
Yep. Okay. That's made sense to me. I feel like I can now put it to bed in my mind. I understand.
Frank's asking about the API calls with the unlimited Power Apps. And I thought I remembered hearing that it was the same as it was with Dynamics apps, that those were the same on the API calls. They skinned it down for the $10 because I think, I think what happened is I'm not necessarily underestimating the API calls, Frank. I'm just going on what Microsoft's telemetry that they're looking at has said that the actual usage is, but I lost my point. Oh, well.
Yeah. Prashant has said around the Power App portal licensing. And I mean, I've had, done multiple interviews with the team there. They're pretty set in their ways on that, and they don't seem to be budging, but I definitely people are looking at alternative portal options now.
I've heard some chatter about them looking at that. They did
revisit it.
Well, I don't know about revisiting, but they introduced tiers, And I think that was for larger use cases. But then I think they've got some customers. Well, first of all, I think the tiers don't even apply unless they're on an EA. So that's one of the challenges. They got to be on an EA. So that knocks out a whole bunch of customers right there. But even the customers that are on EA, the tiers still weren't making it economically good enough. So I think they've kind of said, hey, if you're on EA, call us. We'll we can negotiate. We'll haggle. We'll come up with something. I mean, that's not official. That's not a long-term. That's not a scalable model. Is call us.
Yeah.
So, but I don't think they ever built the Microsoft portals with the idea that it was going to be WordPress. They looked at.
No. It's not a content management system by any stretch, right? It's not a CMS, and I feel too many people do confuse it with CMS.
Well, I think you got a lot of people out there that are looking at things like WordPress and some of the portal solutions out there, like our good friend George Dubinsky has, and things like that, and thinking, well, this is cheaper. WordPress is like, it cost me $25 a month for WordPress or something like that compared to this, but I don't think that's where Microsoft was trying to take this portals solution, was to compete with what you could do with WordPress. But there is the reality of what you could do with WordPress. And I think, again, I'll circle back to the same thing I said at the beginning. Microsoft is building this stuff for enterprise customers. And the people that are complaining about portal costs and portal stuff is smaller businesses that are looking at WordPress as an option, which enterprise customers don't have WordPress as an option.
No, exactly. Yeah, Frank's done the research on the core limit there and the overflow.
He's still running the math every which way.
Yeah, just on I often hear the Dynamics 365 Pro license or professional license.
Yeah, there's two of those.
Are they it's just Dynamics 365 sales or Dynamics 365 customer service? So they're just calling that the professional license? Because the enterprise license is just one of those with the add-on, right, to go broader.
So the difference between the enterprise sales and enterprise customer service and the professional sales and professional customer service is $30 a month cheaper. So 65 US versus 95 US, first of all.
Yep.
So that's and this is the solution. I've been talking to me about this for years. As they've been fiddling around with this. This originally was going to be a business edition product, and then they dropped that. But and then there was, they were interested in SMB at the time, and then they didn't give a shit about SMB anymore, and then suddenly they give a shit about SMB again.
Yeah.
So then they're looking back at this sales professional with the idea that this is going to be their SMB solution. Well, the only thing SMB about it is that it's $30 cheaper. The app, it's basically an enterprise sales app with a bunch of handicap limitations on what you can do with it.
Are they mainly API limitations?
No, it's more around maximum number of forms that you can use, maximum number of custom entities. It's a bunch of arbitrary, silly limitations that really were just designed to kind of handicap that app to make it worth less.
Yeah.
My problem is they didn't do anything to make that app any better or easier for the SMB customer than the enterprise sales app is. Microsoft does not have a grasp at all of the concept of simple. Mm-hmm. Their idea of simple is massively complex to someone who's looking for something simple, and it always has been. And they, lowering the price $30 and throwing some limits on an enterprise app does not make it any simpler to use. You just made it cheaper. It's the same complex thing for a small business to get started with. So I don't know. We're working with them on some other ideas around SMB at scale. We're talking to them about dropping our Rapid Start on top of the sales professional, because they can't seem to figure out how to make something simple, but we did. So we're working with distributors now and Microsoft as well on this idea of dropping our solution on top of their solution.
Yep. And just stripping off all their excessive stuff.
The limits that they have on sales professional are probably.
Oh, I see what you're doing. You're not even stripping anything off. You're just saying, don't go through that interface, go through our interface of our PowerApp.
Drop that. Yep. Drop that. Well, we're rewiring it back to the out of the box entities because we've got them again, but Buy the sales professional license, but don't use the sales professional app. Use our app instead. And then maybe at some point you graduate to the sales professional app. But, you know, which is another interesting thing. I'm actually doing on 365 Saturdays coming up here in Tampa this Saturday. As a matter of fact, Batinko's coming to stay with me Friday and Saturday night here at my place because he's speaking in it. And I'm doing a session on kind of moving from D365 to PowerApps. Okay. Which was this idea that, you know, and Frank will get all excited about this again, I'm sure. But this was this idea that you've got, you know, some or all of your users are using accounts, contacts, and a bunch of custom entities. They're not using any restricted entities. Mm-hmm. And you're sitting, because that's what you were sold by Microsoft or a partner, you're sitting on a enterprise plan license for, you know, $120 a month or something like that, or maybe sales at 95. You're sitting on this big ass license and you're not really using everything that license is supposed to be paying for. You know, the value that price should be giving you is not value you're using. You're doing other things with it. And there's a case or an opportunity there where you could potentially build a Power App on top of that Dynamics 365 CDS environment. Remove any, you know, don't utilize any of the restricted entities, right? And even through multiplexing, because I've had people say, I'll do a fake case entity that just goes and updates the real one. That's multiplex. You can't do that. But this idea that then that app would potentially, you know, you could potentially put those users on a $10 pass on that app. You know, presuming, Frank, of course, that they'll fit within those smaller API limits, which on a $10, certainly on a $10 is something that they'll have to consider. And it's not going to be everybody in the organization, maybe in a small company, but, you know, enterprise organizations got, you know, 1,000 users of Dynamics, and they've got 20 of them in some department that are working on some little custom thing over there, and they're paying $95 a user for that because they have no idea the thing they actually already even built. They built a Power App themselves. That has accounts and contacts and some custom entity they're using. They already built something that would fit on a $10 license, don't even know it. So this is probably a secret I don't know that Microsoft wants broadly promoted out there, but frankly, if I'm paying $95 for something that's only worth $10, I'm going to cancel. I mean, they're better off to have those people with those use cases move off that license down to the least expensive license that'll do what they need to do. Yeah. If that happens to be the $40 Power App instead of the $10 pass, so be it. Because if customers are paying too much and not getting the value, they're just going to churn. That doesn't help anybody. It doesn't help Microsoft, doesn't help us. Yeah.
So one of the things, like I'm currently involved in an internal project for Microsoft at the moment, and I'm reading and researching a lot around Center of Excellence. Yeah. Which for Prashant on the call will know we were well ahead of that game, right? Back in our practice back in the day, because we were called the COE as well, or the Center of Excellence.
Oh, is Prashant one of your former folks there?
Yeah,
okay.
Used to work with me.
Good
so, sorry, I just got an incoming call. Sorry, I can't talk now. And so this whole area of Center of Excellence, you know, they see, you know, Microsoft's goal is companies, some of these like very big companies, and I'm talking about big based on number of staff. We're talking about tens of thousands, if not 20 of thousands type, you know, going in and having the Center of Excellence set up that kind of facilitate this ongoing learning and moving of non-digital processes to digital using apps or anything in the Power Platform toolkit, if you like, as part of that. And of course, part of it is, you know, bringing IT along for the journey, putting all what's called digital guardrails in place, and making sure that you go to, like I've been coining this term a bit, and it might come up a bit in Barcelona, is this concept of biz DevOps, right? Where you're taking a business process and going, okay, can we put that through some triage, some cycle, use some modern tooling around it, and either fully automate it or automate it to as much as possible, and then start working with the enriched data we're now collecting, because we were never collecting that before, And like, I use it very simply. If you look at anybody filling out a checklist, let's say on an aircraft, for example, they go through and they're doing, is the tire pressure right? Check, 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 check. That on a paper might be making sure the checks are done, but that in a data format goes, hang on a second, this aircraft has failed 5 every time we get to this one. The tire pressure is this. There's a pattern. We need to fix some shit, right? Which you'll never get in a paper-based system because nobody can see all those patterns forming.
Yep.
What's the opportunity for the Microsoft partner around then going into organizations and establishing center of excellences for those organizations? Because, you know, sometimes IT need their hand held. What's their part of it? How do they make sure, you know, a data loss prevention is set up correctly? And how do we make sure that nobody's going to connect a public API with a, you know, internal API, and all of a sudden we're breaching GDPR and sharing shit outside our company, or somebody unknowingly builds an app that does that, you know?
I mean, there's two things. I think, you know, one, the tooling, and Microsoft, you know, they obviously didn't create the term center of excellence. They adopted that. That's a well-known term out there for any sort of a let's wrap some policies, procedures, and tactics around something. And that's whole idea. And that's where they kind of took that phrase. What they've done is they've built some tools that they're very clear. First of all, they're not supported by Microsoft. It's something they're just like, here, you can have this. And
it's like a getting started kit, right? It's a kit of things.
It is. And they're very clear that this kit does not a center of excellence make. This is some tooling. And I would encourage everyone. I mean, the tooling is free, right? You can download it on GitHub. There are, I think, 3 or 4 solutions that you can put on a naked CDS instance. It doesn't require dynamics. You can put it on a CDS.
Yeah.
And there's some pretty interesting things that, I mean, it takes a little work to set up. And obviously for an enterprise company with thousands of people out there potentially building thousands of apps, it's critical to have a tool like that just to be able to get visibility and understand what's going on. But even in a smaller organization, I can see value just from that tooling, whether you're going to build a center of excellence or not.
Yeah.
You know, just in the tooling itself, it was pretty interesting just dropping it on my own tenant and having it, you know, once you connect up the APIs to Microsoft services, stuff that, you know, it's kind of unique to them. I think they're giving us some interesting connectivity into the back end with those solutions. You know, it's surfacing up within my own organization, all of the PowerApps that are out there, different information about, you know, their usage, about who the makers are in the organization and stuff like that. Obviously in a partner organization, it's going to look a little different because we're all users and makers, but in a customer organization, almost of any size, I think clearly in an enterprise organization, it would be easy to lose a handle on PowerApp development that you're unaware of without a tool like this. You'd have no idea without a tool like this, but this pulls it all together. What they really don't want to have is they don't want to have customers go flip the off switch on PowerApps, you know, which they can. You remember we talked a while back, it was a little bit of a controversial thing, at least I thought it was going to be, was that they decided to make the ability for users, and these will be either Office 365 users or Dynamics users, to build PowerApps by default. They could. And my thinking at the time was they're going to be using up capacity because they don't know what they're doing. They're going to be connecting to external. That's just going to be a nightmare. And as soon as IT figures out what's going on, they're going to go hit that off switch.
Yeah.
They still have the ability to shut it off, you know, org wide with a flip of a switch. I mean, I get Microsoft not wanting to reach out to IT and say, hey, here's a switch you can flip to turn it on, because they would never have turned it on. They would never have turned it on.
What is that off?
And I think that's where the center of excellence idea was, you know, okay, your enterprise IT, we don't want you to turn this switch off. Ideally, and what we're seeing now is everybody that's putting in a center of excellence is doing it after the fact.
Yeah.
Horses left the barn. There are people building stuff. It's because it's gotten out of control, crazy willy-nilly, that they're like, wait a minute, we need to get this under control. And that's when they're either doing one of two things. They're either establishing something like this to control it, or they're turning it off.
Yeah.
But if you got a whole bunch of users out there that have been building apps for the last 6 months that are solving problems, IT is going to have a tough time just turning that off.
Yeah.
It's going to be a whole lot of noise. So there's some motion, I think, some momentum towards, getting a center of excellence instead.
I tell you what, I've just unzipped the packet and whatnot, and as in the download off that link that I put up there. And yeah, you're right. There's 3 different managed solutions. One's around nurture, core components.
Yep.
And then there's a couple of PDFs. I find it's interesting. They've put everything in this thing and nothing has been anonymized. So I just right click on it, go to info on the Word doc and see who the authors are.
Yep.
And it gives you some pretty straight away, okay, who's involved in doing this.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, looking at that, based on who I can see the author is, or who's the most recent contributor, that's good stuff, because that's a lot of the thinking there, I feel, has come from a production and a very large corporate environment where that was run. So I think it's more though than just a bunch of tools. The COE has got to be kind of like, it's about creating that internal community of stakeholders, I feel, that come on the journey, that get exposed to the technology, things around everything from lunch and learns to internal hackathons to internal app in a day events and everything. So you bring the entire organization on a journey. I think it's a lot more than just chucking in some monitoring stuff for IT around admin and governments, which is a key component of it. Yep. I think it's much more around how do you get senior leadership bought into a digital culture that is going to permeate multiple app cycles. When I say multiple, I mean multiple apps being built over a period of time. So if you were thinking of doing this in your company, I'd be going a lot more than just going and flicking some switches, installing some solutions, that traditional IT piece. I think the consulting piece is actually quite a large, exciting piece of work here if you were to go as a partner and go and start doing this for companies, not your traditional kind of just implementer type partner.
An interesting parallel would be an ISV solution, like, for example, Click Dimensions. And I've talked to Dickerson about this in the past, and they've got a bunch of resellers out there selling Click Dimensions, and they're partners. They're technical partners, perfectly capable of installing that solution and getting that solution turned on and getting users assigned to it. But most of the partners out there don't have the knowledge to then have the customer succeed with the solution. Technically, yes, here's how you make an email template. Hey partner, what should that email say? Well, I don't know. I have no idea what your email should say. But frankly, without knowing what the email should say, the solution won't succeed. So I think the COE is kind of similar in my mind, that technically to install this set of starter kit tools on an instance for a customer and help them sort out maybe how it links up to their DLP policies, and this sort of stuff is definitely in the wheelhouse of our typical partner. But then working with that partner or with that customer from the standpoint of not necessarily trying to sell them your services or your solutions or your SI services, but instead, here's how you would develop a program to nurture the expansion of this. That's not a typical partner type of a thing to do, because they're driven mostly by project services, and that's not really project services. That's more of like professional consulting without any work product. So I don't know. I think they'll definitely be. It took me about 2 hours to get the COE toolkit fully deployed and wired up, and boy, talk about evidence of stuff not being ISV ready. That deploys with a whole bunch of flows that are part of the solution. So step one, of course, after you've installed the solution, is you have to open up every one of these flows, and every single spot it's looking for an authentication point. You have to go authenticate. And these flows which it was an interesting exercise to have to do that, because you got to see how they built these flows, which are some pretty complex, multi-branch, pretty elaborate flows. And you realize this because you have to open up every fucking step to find the goddamn little red triangle to click. So that's the reason why we're not shipping flows in our ISV solutions. I would never expect a customer to have to go through what I went through. I mean, I know what I'm doing, and it took me an hour to connect the flow.
They're working on a solution for that as part of the whole solution awareness of flows to make that a much smoother experience. Are they not?
They're working on every fucking problem we have, but you know, working on it and having a solution to it anytime soon are two different things. You know, I got a customer today that we put on our solution on CDS. And he was asking me recently about the Teams integration. I've been looking at all the Teams integration stuff. It looks really cool. Well, we don't have Teams integration for vanilla CDS. The bits for Teams integration happen when you install one of the first-party apps. That brings in the bits for the Teams integration.
Yep.
No reason for that. It's just where those bits are sitting right now. And Charles and other people on the team have said, yep, no, we're definitely going to make that. That's the kind of thing we want to make that, available. But for the moment, you can't get there from here short of, so here, listen.
No, it's box ticking though, right? They've made a mandate inside Microsoft that every product needs to work within Teams. So they make something light up, a form in Teams from Dynamics, and they go, boom, we've done it.
Yeah.
The first thing I notice, and I don't know if this has changed, correct me, viewers, if I am wrong, but I don't want a form necessarily showing up inside Teams for customer A, B, or C. I want a view. I want the views. I want to go, here's my 20 customers under a view. Then I can click and presence that view in there, but none of that's there, right? You can't get views, can you? Maybe I'm wrong, to appear in Teams.
I think that is part of the Teams integration that we've had up to now has been like the first effort. I'd call it a minimum viable product.
A year ago.
I know, but now I think as part of this upcoming push, we're getting the next wave of that, which is supposed to be a much deeper Teams integration. I haven't really looked to see what that means or what the timeline is on making that available for CDS. And then of course, ISV is last on the list, right? So it makes sense. I mean, I was talking to one of their folks about this ISV ready thing, and this is a pretty high up guy, said that they're going to have a new mandate internally that a feature can't go GA until it's ready for ISVs.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that's nice, but nobody's going to have that patience. I think his thinking was that would force them to do the things that need to be finished to make it usable for ISVs. But if it's ready for customers and SIs tomorrow, they're not going to wait for those bits. They're going to GA it, and they should GA. They shouldn't wait. I mean, GA, when shit's ready to GA, get it out. It's too competitive a space out there. You can't wait for anything. Just don't forget about ISVs after you GA it. Come back and finish the damn thing. That's what I want.
Yeah. So you've mentioned ISV again, and I have another question that, is running through based on work I'm doing at the moment. We've talked about the 10% level, the 20% level. The 20% level, right? Unless you're a gold partner of some sort, you can't even qualify for that level, correct?
I don't think the issue is gold, although that could be one of the things they threw up there.
Listed as a requirement that I saw, you have to be a gold partner.
Yeah, and before we were a gold partner, there were plenty of times something required gold partner, and they made exceptions. So I think that's just kind of a quick culling of the herd. Is let's throw gold on it. I think I remember at the time you couldn't even publish in App Source unless you were a gold partner at all when they first did that. You know what I mean? And so I think that's just their way to let's cut the herd. There's not a lot of partners that are in that 20% category. They don't want there to be a lot.
No.
Googs, I think, had told us on either the time I talked to him, you talked to him, or we both talked to him. I think he talked about picturing that to be like maybe 100 ISVs there.
But the other thing, you can't be co-sell ready though, right? Co-sell ready is 20%, isn't it? You can't be co-sell ready at 10.
You can be co-sell ready and not opt into the co-sell program. You won't be prioritized. You won't be at the top of the co-sellers list, because picture this, I'm a Microsoft seller, right? And I'm looking at co-sell ready applications, but here's 3 of these applications that are paying 20%. Here's one that's also co-sell ready, but didn't opt into the program. So co-sell ready is a prerequisite to get in the program, but it's not, it doesn't put, that doesn't mean you're in the program. You know, the other thing Microsoft doesn't want to do is, I mean, there's lots of folks out there that might complain about paying 20%, but there's a bunch of people that'd be happy to pay 20%, thinking, oh, Microsoft's going to sell the hell out of my product and I'll make up for it that way.
Yeah.
But you got to think about it from what co-sell is about. I mean, co-sell is a motion for enterprise sellers. These are selling into enterprise and larger corporate customers. They're not selling into mid-market SMB. They're selling to the big customers. Most of them are aligned on a vertical, right?
Okay.
So most of them are, so you got co-sellers, or you got sellers in the healthcare vertical, right? They're going deep in healthcare vertical. They're looking in the marketplace for, they're not looking for widgets. They're looking for significant IP that is relevant to their particular vertical industry, that is going to make it easier for them to sell that customer that damn license. Oh, yeah. Healthcare organization, we've got this massive healthcare R Us solution from this ISV that solves so many of your problems. And let's bring them in. So, you know, and they really want to use ISV to try and sell the license.
Yep.
So a lot of people that would like to get in there they're not helping that motion. You're not helping that seller sell a license with a widget. It's got to be significant. It's got to be vertical. You know, that's really what they're targeting. So when Googs was talking about not seeing probably more than 100 in there, I think 100 would be a reach for, I don't think we have 100 deep vertical ISVs in the freaking channel that would fit that kind of a mold. We got tons of widget makers and tons of horizontal ISVs, but deep vertical ISVs, not a lot.
Yeah. Not a lot. Yeah.
Not a lot.
I see Dave Newman there from MapTasker. You know, the geospatial experts say that co-sell ready prioritization can be at 10%. My question would be, was that a one-off? Like, did you get you brought the right round of drinks at the right time? Or is that kind of, you could provide a link to a Microsoft public resource that shows that? Or is that your understanding, Steve-O?
Correct. There's his point right there. I think that co-sell ready is a term for the co-sellers that it's met the requirements of what was called the co-sell ready program. Doesn't mean that they're getting 20%. But when they're looking in that catalog for a solution, and if you're the only solution to the problem, and it's a vertical solution that people are looking for, you know, then the co-seller doesn't have any choice. He's going to bring in your 10% product. But if he's got an option to bring in something else that's going to pay 20, yeah, he's going to bring in that one. And it doesn't even have to be as good as yours.
It totally makes sense. So in your mind, what would the checklist be to be co-sell ready for your product? Let's say Rapid Start for sales.
But it's not in my mind. They've got a specific list of co-sell ready things that need to be met. It's been a while since we've got that, so I don't know where it's at today, but you could certainly find that out there among their resources. I'm sure, just doing a search on, you know, co-sell ready for Microsoft.
So is it much beyond being fully listed in AppSource with test drive environment? Is it?
There's a few more steps. I wouldn't say it's a huge number of you know, Dave's saying lots of hoops to jump through. Maybe I'm remembering it fondly, or maybe when there weren't as many hoops back when we got it. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's a vetting process for Microsoft. They don't want to waste their sellers' time with, here's a catalog of 8 million widgets that do nothing. They really want to focus on, and even if it's much more significant than a widget, I don't care. Is this IP going to help this vertical seller sell our license, or is it not? And frankly, something like Click Dimension is a good example of something that, I think that in a lot of those cases, they don't necessarily look at that as selling a license. And I know that's been a case of a lot of the big ISVs and Click Dimensions. We'll be happy to say this, that lots of customers bought the license because of our solution.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of that chicken or the egg story, depending on whether you're the chicken or the egg. I know there's lots of the Salesforce ISV marketplace is much better at this.
Yeah.
Where ISVs are out there selling their solution independent of the fact that it runs on Salesforce.
Yeah.
The customer may not even know it runs on Salesforce. The Salesforce license has been bundled in from the ISV. You go to the ISV's website, it doesn't say Salesforce on it anywhere.
Oh, no.
It's deep specific about that vertical. It's an HRIS system. It's talking HR, and not even mention the engine it runs on. And we haven't got there yet in Dynamics. Most Dynamics ISVs are pushing that we run on top of Dynamics, which most vertical customers could give a shit about what the solution runs on. They're not putting enough emphasis on their solution. They're trying to ride the Dynamics brand maybe into the customer. Yeah. And I think that'll be interesting to see when we make that transition, because I think it's one of the reasons Salesforce has been more successful with their marketplace is they got a lot of ISVs out there that are doing their own marketing, their own branding out there around their solution, and Salesforce is just an engine under the hood.
Exactly. That makes sense. We've got 5 minutes to go, 4 minutes actually, and just want to talk about.
Wow, that went by quickly for having no agenda.
Barcelona.
We didn't bore everybody with our no agenda
2 weeks
show.
away, the World Mobile Phone Conference got cancelled, which had 100,000 people going. Key sponsors like Nokia, etc., all pulled out of the gig.
Where was
because
that?
of their concern about the virus that was in Barcelona that was happening this week. They pulled out. There were 6,000 Chinese nationals apparently attending that, and that drove a lot of that decision, as in with the spread of that virus, because what that kicked off, I knew on the UK channel discussions was, does that mean that Dynamic Communities or extreme365, will that get cancelled? And it seems the answer is a very clear no, based on all facts presented to this point. Janet, the CEO of Dynamic Communities, put out a post on their website to that effect, that it's definitely an all go. They're taking their insights from the World Health Organization. They're also taking their lead from a range of advisors that specialize in this whole area at from a global perspective. And so it's very clear based on the demographic of attendees for this conference that there's no need to cancel it. So I'll be seeing you in 2 weeks.
It's mostly US and Europe people, right? That attend this, mostly US and Europe.
Yeah. Very low proportion. In fact, I have to fly through Singapore to get to Barcelona, which has been one of the spots that they've known to jump on. So maybe you don't want to sleep in the same bed as me while we're in Barcelona.
I wasn't planning on it.
No. Sure.
I mean, we're sharing a room, but we weren't going to share a bed.
Yeah, valid. No, so I feel quite okay that it's going to be all good, all go, so to speak. You're speaking of.
It's still 3 weeks out. 2 weeks. How far? 2 weeks or 3 weeks out? It's the 18th now.
2 weeks, isn't it? It's only 2 weeks' time if you don't count this week. 2.5 weeks max.
Yeah, 2.5 weeks. I mean, I don't know what could happen in 2.5 weeks that would change that. I guess some sudden massive expansion of the thing would change it. I think the concern a lot of us in the U.S. had was, the U.S. was pretty quick to lock out no flights from China when this thing first hit. And, with our U.S. first attitude over here, we're just as likely to just shut out the whole rest of the world until this thing goes away if it looks the slightest bit freaky. And I wouldn't want to be stuck over in Barcelona and have the U.S. I mean, they can have their conference. That doesn't mean the U.S. is going to say, okay, no flights from anywhere other than the U.S.
Dave Newman, are you going to be there from the Sunday at the event? Keen to know, as it'd be good to get you on a panel around, can an SI become an ISV? And it'd probably be good to get your insights on that and become part of that panel. If you're there, it's Monday morning in Barcelona.
Did they go from a SI to an ISV? Is that their story?
Yeah, can an SI become an ISV? Is that possible?
But was Dave's company previously an SI?
Cool. He lands on the Friday before, same as us. He does have SI connections, definitely. Yeah.
Very cool.
Awesome. We'll
Cool,
get you
man.
in, Dave. I think that'll be good. And of course, you're going to be on that panel, Steve. I'm going to convene the panel, probably thinking of the format. I know we're on time to get each person on the panel to represent or 5 minutes on their journey. And then we'll go to audience for QA. That's what I'm thinking.
That's good. And if anybody hasn't read the post I just wrote about restricted entities, go jump on and help us make some noise around that.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, thanks, everybody. Good chatting to you. We'll kill the stream there. We'll be back